Hi everyone, this is Scott Akers, and I wanted to walk you through my software proposal. I've been putting it together for about the last 12 months, and it is in online educational technology. And the software itself is a syllabus builder of sorts, and it's based on a number of things. To give you an introduction, it all started when I was working on MOOCs at the University of Texas. From there, I kind of just started digging into the online education environment, seeing what exactly is happening in these different areas. And from there, I continued to work on understanding the processes behind developing MOOCs. From there, understanding what gaps there are in the value of software that is currently on the market. Built out a high-level architecture of what an ideal platform would look like for a higher education institution. From there, I gathered parameters, and those parameters actually came from the University of Texas, the Center for Teaching and Learning. They really helped to refine the specific granular elements of the software product itself. That is reflected in the design, and later I'll show you a pre-alpha prototype. Finally, as the last major piece of collateral, there's a project plan, and then next steps is kind of just a what happens next. So, as I'd mentioned, I started working at the University of Texas during my Master's of Science in Technology Commercialization. That's MSTC for short. And I managed to get connected with a great group of individuals who were working on developing new MOOCs at UT. One thing that I kind of gathered over the course of my initial MOOC, where I was doing content publishing, procuring, working within the studio, the edX studio environment, kind of gathered that there wasn't necessarily a predefined process going into MOOC development. So what I did was I built out this chart or this flow chart, and it basically describes the primary activities that occur going from your pre-planning, where you first have your idea, all the way to the actual project planning, and finally the execution phase. And one area that's not exactly lined out on here is post-MOOC execution. And that's kind of the thought that we have all of this wonderful digital collateral out there, but we don't necessarily have an idea of what we'll be using in the next phases or the next iteration of this information. Pre-planning itself consists of the professor, the faculty member, determining what the learning objectives and teaching objectives are for this class. And that's really what a syllabus looks like at a very generic level. In addition to, when you're initially doing this development process also, when doing the specific MOOC environment, you have to consider a lot of other things that I think were uncovered during the first round of MOOCs, but full understanding, I think, is just now starting to become about within the university of what all it takes to create one of these courses and to make it a systematic process as well. Next, you have project planning, which is where you start to develop your team. You start to understand what digital assets you're going to be creating. Budget review, developing a budget in the first place, having an operational plan. These are all parts of project planning. And finally, the execution phase, and that's where you're doing the filming. That's where you're doing activity creation of assessment questions, things like that. All of which are iterative processes that you will, as you publish a week or 2 weeks worth of content, you will go through a very similar process to go from no content to publishable content that you put out on your delivery portal. So that's kind of the understanding of the process for developing online courses. What I was able to do over the course of my program was build out kind of a high-level architecture of what are the vital elements of creating online courses and imparting higher education standards onto the creation of these courses. And a big part of that is instructional design. Pedagogy is a very important aspect of online education, and if you don't have instructional design brought to the forefront of this design of this planning process, then it makes it very unclear. The goals are very unclear on what we want to accomplish when we're producing this class. So having that instructional design understanding, having an understanding of best practices as it relates to creating these courses, those haven't been developed yet. The university's been doing a great job in putting forth those standards. Again, that is reflected in this software design. To give you a little scope, this right here is a full screen of certain technology elements, how those technology elements integrate together, features, and then the benefits that are derived from that. Again, this as it stands is a very, very high-level overview of what is important to this software to developing this software. These pieces right here are really the first aspects of what we are talking about when we're talking about a syllabus builder program. I'm happy to go into more detail about these, simply a high-level overview so you can understand kind of where I'm coming from, my perspective, and hopefully leave you with a better understanding of this software project. As I'd mentioned, those guidelines and kind of an understanding of the architecture of how the university will be building out courses, I was able to take the guidelines and break them down into individual line items that would influence the design and the execution of the actual software product, be it field limiters, be it certain prompts that occur at different points of building a syllabus, things like that. In the end, I was able to come up with this right here. This right here is a flowchart of things that would be built into the syllabus builder application. There's a lot of prompting, it's a lot of heavy wizarding, but again, triggering those certain thought processes with people that are trying to build these online courses is very important. So there's a lot of guidance as it relates to gathering metadata tags, prompting faculty thought, things like that. And also populating information specific to the digital assets. Over here on the right, you have a gigantic list of all, well, not all, but many, many, many of the activities that occur over the course of a MOOC or the creation of any online course, really. So now that you've kind of seen the high level of the software, I guess I'll show you the pre-alpha prototype, and it's just called SyllBuilder. Right now it's just a dummy application, but you'd have your account profile where your professor would go in, say, I have these credentials, I'm specialized in XYZ area. I teach these courses, I have a focus research in these areas, and I have a general profile. The key to this is when you're talking about specializations in credentials or courses taught, if you have a pool of digital assets that you want to translate into a course, you're able to narrow down that pool by simply knowing what area of subject, or like what subject area that the professor themselves is looking for. So just a small, one of those nuances that can help take a normal piece of software to the next level. So if I click on create a new course, it'll ask me a number of questions about how long do you want this course to be, if you'd write your course welcome, things like that. And then we go to a course overview and we say I want to add a new big idea, or I want to, and within that big idea I have to understand what are some of the learning objectives, what at a very high level do you want students to have a better understanding of by the end of the course, things of that nature. Once you have a new big idea for that course, you're going to create learning objectives. And the learning objective is basically you present a student with a stimulus and you want them to interact with that with a verb that shows some sort of learning occurred. Whether it's knowledge, comprehension, this is based on Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis. These are all things to consider when building an online course and prompting ways for students to interact with that course. When you go into creating activities, there's a lot of metadata that's included. There's the digital assets itself, There's kind of an understanding of what does the student need, be it a login for a certain application, or what understanding do they need prior to doing this activity. Instructions both for the student and for the professor, assigning point values, using examples, or having a purpose and objective. Also outlining what the purpose or objective of this activity is, and then choosing what type of activity it is or what type of digital asset that we're talking about. These are really important things to consider. If you go back to the dashboard, ideally when you populate your course with all of the digital assets and activities, you'd have this progress slider. Once it's completed, then you can go to the next step, which would be publishing to a platform. I showed you how to edit activities, prerequisites. We've got having a course calendar. Some of these things are taken care of by an LMS system, but when you're designing the course, it's important to keep those considerations. So anyways, apologies if I went on too long about that. The next phase is, or the next element of this project is the actual project plan. And right here I have a list of, I won't say all, but many activities associated with building out this new course or this new software. Right here you can actually see a project plan. And the project plan itself is a breakout of all of the activities from that task list, cross-referenced with time periods that they will be occurring. It summates very well, so you don't have to worry about, let's just say that you're able to go through, identify which activities are occurring at what phases of the project. Down below, you'll see a 7-day lagging total and a 30-day leading total. It's showing areas or points in time that have a number of activities going on. What's the last 7 days look like? Has it been a really busy last 7 days? And then a 30-day leading total, which is kind of an indication of how much time, how much effort, how hard is the next month going to be as it relates to where you stand right now. That's a good way to prepare yourself, ramp up additional assets, ramp up additional work time, scheduling changes, things like that, to make sure that goals are accomplished. Pricing assumptions you can find on the Price Assumptions tab. The pricing sheet itself shows when activities are occurring, how much those activities cost for those to happen, and ultimately what a budget versus actual would look like. Now, lastly, you have a cash flow statement. It's a very simple cash flow statement, but it is a good glimpse as to what the financial pathway for this project is. That being said, I'm always looking for more feedback on this. I would love to hear back from you, and if there's anything I can do to explain more, I'm happy to do so. My email address is scottmakers@outlook.com. Thank you.